I'm Evelyn, and I'm a geoholic.
All my favorite people make me mad. Everything that feels so good is bad, bad, bad. All my favorite songs are slow and sad. I don't know what's wrong with me.
I don't know what's wrong with me.
That is an anthem for this group.
Gosh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So good. All right, here we are, episode 173.
173.
So I was kind of projecting things out, and it looks like this year we will definitely hit episode 200.
Oh, we will.
Easily. Yeah. That's only, 27 episodes away.
Okay, yeah.
So we'll hit episode 200. And
somewhere around Thanksgiving then, right?
probably right around there,
Okay,
if not before. And we will easily eclipse 150,000 downloads.
Oh, yeah. We'll hit that by Labor Day.
I think, pretty close. At the rate we're going, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
It is a hectic time of year for me because Megan and I, our birthdays are like a week apart.
Yours was last week, right?
Mine was last week. Hers is yesterday.
Okay.
Of course, you got Mother's Day coming up. So it is an absolute freaking nightmare trying to get everybody together, like to celebrate birthdays and then Mother's Day and everything like that. I know, first world problems.
Really is.
But it's just a crazy
Your
time
family that is within a few hours of you all needs to
Right,
you just
I
need
know.
to get all those people together.
I know. Yeah, most people are like, that's not a problem.
Yeah, it's like I haven't seen my brother,
Yeah. But other than that, I am super
So what are the big plans then? Do you have a barbecue planned, or are you guys going to do a family Zoom call or something?
When you have two daughters in their 20s that also have lives of their own, it is impossible to agree on a date or a time or a place to meet. So it appears right now that everything is going to get celebrated this coming Sunday on Mother's Day.
Okay.
At our house.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Nice. Having the old family. You bring your mom down too?
The whole family or whatever they say, damn family.
The whole damn family.
I'll come into Kent's house on Sunday.
Okay, nice.
It'll be interesting for sure. And other than that, I am super excited. I leave at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning to go to where am I going? Quebec.
Man.
Yep, for sure. And to go to the Canadian National Surveyors Conference. Really looking forward to meeting a ton of really great people from all over the world. I am moderating a panel discussion of, I think 10 or 12 surveyors from all over the world. A couple of them have actually been guests.
What's the topic of the discussion?
The state of the profession. The same thing we talk about all the time. So it's just
never
gonna
heard that one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty easy conversation for me to have. But it'll be cool to have it at international level.
Oh,
for
absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
Something tells me that the same problems that we are experiencing here will be the same problems that our friends to the north are also experiencing.
100%, not just from the north, from the east, from the west, from the south, from everywhere. We sent out a questionnaire to all the people on the panel, like 5 issues, 5 promising things type thing. And it was amazing how on the issue side, pretty much everybody 3 of the 5 match type thing, and same thing on the positive side. So it's going to be a good conversation and just looking forward to getting the different perspectives for sure.
Just so you know, in case it comes up, Canada is still holding strong as the number 2 country of where our audience comes from.
Well, we're going to boost that for sure.
Oh, without a doubt.
For sure. I'm also going to be doing some interviews while I'm there, of course. So
nice.
Stay tuned for that content. Should be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And insightful, as I mentioned. How about you, Sean? What's new?
Oh, there's a lot happening at the old Faber household.
Yes, there is.
Doing some reconstruction, kindergarten graduations coming up.
Oh, big time.
Business is also crazy busy, and just a lot of things going on.
All for the good.
All for the good.
Yep. Big graduation party.
There's a series of, we're still in birthday season and kindergartners. So
gotcha.
There is a birthday this upcoming week and then the following week. And I think the second birthday party is a combination graduation party.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. So set the bar low for the graduation party because everything is going to be compared to this. So every time there's a graduation, you're going to have to up your game.
Yeah, I'm usually one to lower expectations before raising them, so we'll work off of that low bar.
You'll be just fine then. All right, tell us about the opening number.
A song called All My Favorite Songs. Group named AJR is an American indie pop band consisting of three brothers, Adam, Jack, and Ryan.
AJR.
Metzberger is where the name came from.
Yep.
The band formed in 2005 and gained popularity with their hit single I'm Ready in 2013. They have since released multiple albums and have become known for their unique sound, which blends electronic and pop elements with brass and other instruments. AJR has been praised for their catchy melodies, thoughtful lyrics, and innovative use of technology in their music.
And having listened to probably a couple dozen AJR songs today to pick one out, definitely catchy. That's a great way to describe their music.
Some people call that poppy, but when it's more of an indie poppy, I kind of like, catchy is just fine with me.
Yeah, for sure.
It's good once something, in a while. You get out of the car, you're still singing it. I mean, that's always, it stays with you in a good way, I would say.
Yeah, we do have to mention that song in particular was co-produced with one of my favorite bands, Weezer.
Yeah, you got to admit these guys have to be Weezer influenced.
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
You hear it, and obviously, they've had
consistencies.
some collaboration, so.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool. We are, of course, in the shiny new Diamondback Land Surveying
still shiny
studio.
and new. It's got that new studio smell still.
Yep. I got to tell you a funny story. Last episode, let's see, not the last episode, the one with, this is actually our third episode here.
Oh, yeah. Tim and Will.
Yep, Tim and Will.
Yep.
So Tim's girlfriend was listening to that episode, and she goes, first of all, it was funny as shit. And she goes, did I hear somebody throw a cup or something in the middle of the episode?
Well, I felt it was like, with the initiation thing, or like, you drink the shot in Russia and you throw the shot glass down, or you drink the champagne bottle and break it over the boat. Like, it felt like it was we're christening
that kind of moment.
The new studio, and I was the only one that did it. No one else
I thought that was
in.
freaking hilarious that she heard that. So good. One thing I'm going to mention, I just saw Mr. Tronkinen posted something on LinkedIn today that he is the new president of West Coast Get Kids Into Survey.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember we were talking to him about this.
Yeah. He mentioned it was coming.
And I guess my understanding is we need to get Elaine Ball on to bring us updated or get us updated on all these different things.
It's been a while
she's
since
got
we've seen Elaine. So.
For sure. But so I think my understanding is that they're franchising, and Trent is the owner, for lack of better words, of the West Coast franchise of Get Kids Into Survey.
Okay.
Pretty exciting. So I'm really excited to see where this is going to go.
Well, and if there's any other interest in future franchise opportunities with Get Kids Into Survey, Trent will be the guy to contact.
100%. So kudos to Trent. Time for the Airworks somewhat random trivia. I know you've been running around like a maniac, producer Sean. Did you happen to come up with something today?
I did, actually.
Oh, my goodness.
And you mentioned it earlier. There's some little trivia nuggets about Mother's Day.
Oh, good stuff.
More calls are made on Mother's Day than any other day of the year, and it's also the busiest day for restaurants.
Makes sense.
After Christmas and Hanukkah, more people buy flowers and plants for their moms on Mother's Day than any other holiday. Kind of would expect that. The Greeks would have spring celebrations in honor of Rhea, R-H-E-A, the goddess of fertility, motherhood, and generation. That's way. They used to have a type Mother's Day celebration, but it really started during and following the Civil War. A lovely lady named Anne Jarvis made a concerted effort to foster relationships and community between the mothers on both sides of the war. She started a committee in 1868, which established the first glimmer of today's holiday as the Mother's Friendship Day. And then her daughter, Anna Reeves Jarvis, sought to honor her mother by establishing an intimate day of observance that is very obviously the basis of today's holiday. The very first Mother's Day was celebrated in, guess what year?
Oh, gosh. Oh, man.
1908.
Oh.
And Woodrow Wilson, your second favorite president,
yeah.
signed Mother's Day
Woody.
into law in 1914.
1914.
A few last ones. This is kind of interesting. According to a 2022 report, the average age for a first-time mother in the United States hit 30 for the first time.
Is that going up or coming down?
Going up. First time it got to 30.
Interesting.
Yes. And the average American buys 2.8 Mother's Day cards. So obviously
That makes
Mother's
sense.
Day is not just about your mom, but
Yep.
grandmother, wife, etc.
There's a lot of moms.
And if you only bought one Mother's Day card, you may, because
Yeah.
I have to admit, I don't know if my mom listens. I know my dad does, but I bought 2 Mother's Day cards, and I should have bought 3.
Okay.
Just saying. I have a daughter, so
Yeah.
you can go from there.
I'm with you. I'm with you. And your wife
Currently-
has a mother.
Currently, one grandmother is short, so I'm gonna fix
Yeah.
that tomorrow.
Well, thank God for the Jarvises.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
thank God for moms.
Yeah, I mean, really.
Yeah.
You can't say enough. All the crap that they deal with and put up with for us knuckleheads to get together like this really goes unsaid.
Exactly. Oh, man. Good stuff. Thanks for that, Sean. Next up, we have the Advanced Geodetic Surveys Weekly Words of Wisdom. We're going to be talking a fair amount tonight about the importance of having a good team and teamwork and that type thing. So I thought that this was an appropriate quote. It goes like this: teamwork is the ability to work together toward a common vision. The ability to direct individual accomplishments towards organizational objectives. It is the fuel that allows common people to attain uncommon results.
I like that.
Andrew Carnegie.
Oh, yeah, he knew a little bit about putting teams together.
He does indeed. He does indeed. I thought that was very appropriate for this evening. Speaking of this evening, let's bring in our guest, presented this week by XYHT Magazine. And again, if you're not getting your free subscription to XYHT Magazine, you're absolutely missing out. Just simply go to xyht.com/subscription, I think, something like that. Just Google it. You'll find it. But it is a free subscription. You can get the digital version, which I get, the print version, which I don't know if anybody gets anymore.
Remember we asked, they do have a decent amount of print versions still popping out there. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So take 30 seconds and get your free subscription to XYHT. With that, we have Drew Meren with us this evening. Drew, I'm going to do a quick bio introduction, and then we'll loop you in here. So Drew was born and raised in Queens, New York. He attended Towson University. Go.
The Fighting Salukis.
Go Tigers.
Oh, man, that was too easy.
His hobbies include spending time with his kids. He's recently picked up tennis again and sports card collecting.
Really?
You have to ask him about that a little
to know
bit.
about that.
He is the senior account manager for the northeastern and mid-Atlantic portion of the U.S. for NV5, who we have heard a lot about recently.
Making moves.
Making moves. And he is passionate about being a team player and collaborating to support complex projects.
Wow.
Drew, welcome to the Geoholics.
Thank you for having me. That's quite the introduction.
Well, it's only our introductions are only as good as the information that our guest provides us.
True. Yes.
But I'll give myself a pat on the back.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
very well done.
Absolutely. So before we get into this, we have to do the Trimble Pro Point Icebreaker. And here's our our question this week. What's one thing that you've always wanted to try but haven't had a chance to yet?
Well, a professional one always comes to mind is that we have a fleet of airplanes around the country.
Okay.
And because of liability and the size of the aircraft and several other factors in location, I have never been in one of our airplanes while we are doing acquisition. I've always wanted that. I've only had one time where I've had a freelance photographer get on a plane. I was able to get it approved. Any other time I've been rejected in terms of getting on myself. I don't ask anymore because it's not necessarily worth it. But that one always pops into mind on that one. But I'm going to throw one on you guys. I am going to change your random trivia. I think you should have geospatial trivia. And since I'm full of useless information, and there's always a good one for Canada, since you're going there tomorrow. Do you know that 80% of the population of Canada lives within 100 kilometers of the U.S. border?
Wow. You know what I thought he was going to say? 100 kilometers of a curling club.
That's probably true too.
That's probably true too. I did not know that. Well,
Wow.
I mean,
I'm sure the statistic has varied a little bit in the last
Sure.
couple of years, but it's pretty spot on.
Yeah.
so, and all the big cities are close to the border,
Yeah,
right?
more or less. Edmonton's
More or
up there a
less.
bit. But yeah, I mean, once you get much further north than that, I mean, who wants to live there? You know,
Don't say that too- don't say that too loud.
20% of a very
20% of a large
20% of a large population does, which you've immediately offended. So
the ones
sorry for
that, the ones that don't want to ever be found again,
right.
live off the grid. How about you, Sean? What's one thing you've always wanted to try but maybe haven't yet?
Well, I got to tell you, Drew. I thought he was going to steal my thunder here because the first I read this just now, and the first thing I thought of was skydiving.
Yeah.
Always wanted to go skydiving.
Yep.
It's right up my alley.
Yep.
I'd love to do it and never have had the opportunity. So
I'm with you on that one. I've never tried it. I used to think it's something I wanted to do, but I don't think so anymore.
No?
No.
Why
As
not?
I've gotten older, it's just, I don't know what it is. And I've talked to other people that feel the same way. As I've gotten older, like I am so petrified of heights. Like I can't get 4 steps up on a ladder.
Yeah.
Literally my knees start shaking.
I will admit I've started to get a little not 4 steps on a ladder, but a little shakier than when I was a kid. It was
Sure.
invincible.
Yeah.
But I guess I don't put skydiving in the same category as
I can see that.
fear of heights. Because I mean, when you're 30,000 feet, I mean,
Yeah.
your fear of falling is. I mean, I can't believe it's part of the equation when you're sitting there strapped in and
Yeah. Well, I guess, how about this then? I'm a control freak. And when I'm jumping out of an airplane, I feel like I don't have a whole lot of control.
Well, that's kind of what's the next big birthday milestone for you? 80? 70?
60.
Okay, all right.
60 would be the next big one.
We'll go with 60 then.
Yeah.
I think you should strap yourself in and go skydiving.
Only if you do.
I will guarantee you, if you do it on your 60th, I will be right there with you.
All right, we're going to do it.
All right.
It's written in stone.
What about you? What is one thing that you've always wanted to try but haven't had a chance to?
Okay, so this isn't something I've always wanted to try, but it's something that I've thought about recently that I would love to try. And I mean, I love to push myself outside of my comfort zone.
But not skydiving.
But no. Outside my comfort zone that I can control.
Okay. That's a very odd definition of a comfort zone, but for sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So something I think I would love to try, and I'm not like that funny of a person, but I would love to try, because I know I'd be scared shitless, stand-up comedy.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I am going to see Michael Thompson tomorrow, as a matter of fact, at the Canadian National Surveyors Conference.
Oh, that's
he's
right.
the one that
Yeah,
introduced us.
yeah.
Yep. And he's kind of a amateur stand-up comedian.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's what came to mind when I thought about that, because he's he does it. And we talked about doing a comedy show here in Arizona,
Yeah.
Geoholics Comedy Extravaganza, whatever. And he's like, we'll do it, but you got to get up there on stage and do 5 minutes of comedy. I'm like, oh my God.
I mean, have you even thought about what it would look like to? Oh, we can talk about it more later. We got loop Drew in.
Let's do it. Yeah. Let's find out more about Drew. How about that? So Drew, you mentioned in your bio that you originally were pursuing a degree in economics, but you apparently took a geography class, and your words were you were hooked. Talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah. So I went to school at Towson University, by the way. Shout out to Chuck from XYHT. He's a Towson alum as well.
Oh, wow.
Oh, look at that.
And I took a couple classes in economics the first year and didn't enjoy it at all. And then the next semester, I took a geography class, and I've always had a good sense of direction. And I did well in it, and I like traveling and visiting places. So I figured it was interesting enough for me, and I stayed with it. And then my senior year, I took an internship with the Baltimore County government. I got paid 6 credits, and I got an hourly rate. I thought it was like the best thing ever. I'm like, I could do this for a while, and so. Ever since my senior year, I've been doing GIS work or geospatial work.
Yeah, we should mention that you're also a GISP or GIS professional, correct?
I am. When worked with a couple of people that started it or maintain it. And so when that came up and that designation, I jumped at the chance, and I go to a lot of conferences. I do a lot of presentations.
Nice.
And so when they mentioned that you get like 10 points for one and you need like 95, I was like, I can do that in a year. So I figured at least I can get that title pretty easily.
Right.
I don't know about the written exam anymore. I'm just grandfathered in, but I enjoy signing up. I just renewed it for the third time.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. How long is that? Like, do you know, how long has that certification been around? It's not that long, right? I mean, it's a fairly new as far as certification goes.
I believe it's a 4-year term.
Okay.
So if I'm on my fourth, so it's got to be 8 to 10 years old.
It sounds about right. That sounds about right. The sports card collecting.
Gotta ask.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Should we all be going back to, speaking of Mother's Day, going back to Mob's house and rating the box of baseball cards we have in the attic and seeing what's there?
I think the market's up.
There's a lot has changed. I started during the pandemic. Is that?
Oh wow,
that's what I heard.
You're
was
at home and that
yeah.
the mail still came in, and so my kids are still young, and so my daughter plays soccer, so I got women's national soccer team cards, and then my son liked Pokemon, so I got Pokemon cards, and I try to introduce him to basketball and football and baseball cards. So it was kind of fun to just open packs again, and I think the biggest difference from when we were kids and even the generation before that is that now everybody wants that perfect card, so perfectly centered, no corners, and all that stuff. So
the number,
if
the
your
10
cards are in a shoebox, most likely they're not worth anything. But if you took good care of them,
there's a few, I think I still got lying around, but that's what I was curious on is it more of the market of the old stuff, or there's still a lot of new production that people are still interested in and jumping on? Yeah.
Good new stuff. Old stuff that's in good condition is still very desirable.
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
what I've seen, I think there's probably a lot more card manufacturers these days, and what I've seen is
they all got acquired. So now it's all one company.
Oh gosh, I had no idea. But
it's all owned by Fanatics.
Oh yeah, it's the same. Wow. The apparel guys too, right?
Yep.
They.
Oh my gosh, they got a monopoly on this stuff, huh?
They do. I understand it's become like a streamlined business, and they're trying to combine not only sports cards, but NFTs and crypto and all that stuff combined together to get, people closer to their favorite athletes.
Yeah, interesting. But what I've heard is they're coming out with like these, 1 of 20 cards now that have, a sliver of LeBron James jersey in it or something like that.
Yeah. It's the tangible thing.
It's like hitting the lottery.
Yeah, right.
Golden ticket type stuff. So what's your most coveted card that you have currently?
Well, when I first started with the pandemic, it was 2020, so I collected a lot of 2020 cards, and like what you're talking about, they had variations. So they had like 1 of 1s to 1 of 400.
Sure.
Well, I tried to get 1 of the same card, and so since I'm from Queens, I collected Pete Alonso.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
And so I have every variation of his card from 2020. It's
That's awesome.
17 cards of the same card, but different variations. So I have the 1 of 1 to the 1 of 499.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. I've got because I used to be into it like 20 years ago. And PGA had a card
that's when
set.
you were still an adult.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Just
when I was a kid too, but those are long gone. But I have a Payne Stewart card.
Isn't that cool? Yeah, that's really cool.
So I don't know if it means anything to anybody, if it has any value, but I put it in a clear plastic hard case or whatever and that type thing. But I thought that was one that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone back and looked through and checked, and there's a couple Michael Jordan cards in there that are still worth a couple bucks, but it's not like they got good corners, or like I was still trading them in school, and then eventually put them in the little plastic case, and then be sitting in the garage ever since.
Right, right. Yeah. Okay. Let's get into the meat of this here just a little bit. So first of all, I mean, per your bio information, you're super passionate about teamwork and what it takes to be collaborative and bring people together. How does that passion fit in with your role at NV5?
Sure. So we're the fifth vertical of NV5. So we're NV5 geospatial. Not to correct you, it just we try to. That's a recent designation, so I try to plug that a little bit. We have a fairly large sales team or business development team, and they're broken up by more or less three main areas: the federal government, state, local government with the architectural and engineering firm that works for the state governments, and then the catch-all could be called commercial, utility, energy, those types of clients. And we have a sales team in each of those, but within that, we all have similar type of software that we use. So with the recent acquisition of Axim Geospatial, which is formerly GISP and Continental Mapping, they're an Esri Platinum sponsor on the consulting side, and so trying to leverage all those, it's not something that our firm is normally used to mining work that way. And so leveraging the relationships that people have with other people and other partners is just intriguing to me. I mean, I grew up in a big city and I like talking to people, and, unfortunately I don't know everybody and I don't plan on knowing everybody. But if we have 50 people and they all know 50 people, you can tend to put together a pretty interesting team with an interesting solution pertaining to it.
Yeah, I love that. And so help us understand more about NV5. I mean, talk about
Sure.
NV5, and you said, you're part of NV5 Geospatial. Help me understand the business model just a little bit.
Sure. I mean, I can give you the 2-minute elevator pitch on it.
Perfect.
And don't hold me to all of it. But NV5 started in Hollywood, Florida, and about 10 years ago, they wanted to become one of the big tier 1, 2, 3 engineering firms.
Okay.
And so what they did is that they acquired individual engineering design firms in each state to have a national footprint. And in starting about 5 years ago, they were looking for things to complement the engineering design space. And so they acquired 1 or 2 smaller geospatial firms. They acquired a drone company in Southern California, and then they acquired 1 or 2 smaller firms on the West Coast. And in January 2020, they acquired our firm, which is Legacy Quantum Spatial, which in it by itself is a merger of 3 companies to have a national footprint. And we were by ourselves, 600 people.
Wow.
So since then till now, we've acquired 2 or 3 other geospatial firms: Axim Geospatial, the L3 Harris Geospatial division called Viz. And I think that there's one, Geodynamics, which is a marine solutions here on the East Coast. And so in the last 5 years, there's now 1,000 geospatial people within our company.
Wow.
And so the remaining 2,500 to 3,000 are engineers in individual offices, and not all of them work. Some of them deal with building technology, some of them deal with IT type solutions. So it's pretty fascinating that you work for a bigger company that you can not only talk with their partners or their architectural firms that they work with. So I could spend all day just talking with people that I have no idea what they do and trying to learn and trying to see if there's some solutions that we can work with. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. So there's a lot of collaborating that happens in a model like that, for sure.
Is that you absolutely can. I mean, my territory is actually geographically the smallest, but it's the most states that I work with. But I work with a lot of engineering firms and architectural firms, and so I might not have the relationship, but our parent company might have that relationship.
Is that the size? How many people total with NV5?
I believe the number is closer to, it's between 3,000 and 4,000.
And you just said over 1,000 are in the geospatial.
Wow.
That's a pretty big.
I think on the data side, we're probably I don't want to say we're the largest, but I will say that we are probably one of the largest geospatial data services firms in the country.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty substantial. So talk about the company culture a little bit. What does that look like?
So they try to, when we were acquired in January of 2020, and then 8 weeks later, everything shut down. Our parent company gave us a lot of free range of doing whatever we want. And so we're slowly getting into the mix of being incorporated and all that. But and when you're an engineering firm, there aren't that many just straight salespeople. Most of them are business development people that they have one client or 5 clients in one geographic area, and then they're seller doers type of thing. When they acquired the geospatial side of it, where my job is to bring in business and cultivate clients and bring in work. So there's a learning process on both ends. One is understanding the engineering company's process and how they get things done and how to cross sell and all that stuff. But on the other side is how they will work with a sales team to get not only estimates, but quotes, but also projects and work towards that. So it's always a fun little process to work on.
What do you love about business development?
I like talking to people. I tend to not necessarily be the smartest person in the room, but I like talking with everybody, and I know enough to be dangerous. It's tend to be what I I can get through when everybody has always something interesting going on, a project that's going on, or a new project that we're trying to pursue. So I work with some of the smaller projects to big projects. I work with small little landfills or solar farms all the way to large statewide projects. And so it's very interesting getting people's very different perspectives on things.
Cool.
What's the your primary client? I mean, who's the primary target? Is that typically engineering firms, or are you kind of branching out to direct? Is that always through an engineer, or are you?
No, it's not. It's it can be through a state directly. It could be through a local municipality directly. It could be through an architectural engineering firm directly, and it also can be in a public partner, a federal state partnership where a client could be the federal government with the partnership, as we might be talking about with USGS.
Sure.
So it can really vary. We can also be a subcontractor. So I think my role is very different than almost any other salesperson within the company. Is that our legacy office in Northern Virginia is based in Dulles, right where the airport is, has been around since the 1940s. And so when I first got hired, about 6.5 years ago, I asked for like a database of it, and they gave me 30,000 customers. I'm like,
most of which didn't even exist anymore.
no, yeah, they all got acquired or retired
Right.
or away. But, our office does about 500 or so estimates, contracts, proposals a year.
Wow, crazy. And partnering with someone like USGS, I mean, that's as high level as it gets for the most part.
Yeah, they have one of the most, I don't know of a better one, partnerships at the federal to state partnerships than any other contracting that you can think of for geospatial data. And, the 3D elevation program is become very successful. It's in its 8th year of collecting data and having the state come up with money, and the federal government will fund the rest, or bringing in other agencies. There's a wonderful partnership that is going on there. And it's become very successful. They're almost been able to capture a QL2 minimum spec for the entire nation. They're almost done with it, which is pretty impressive in 8 years.
That's crazy.
Can you go into a little bit? You mentioned that 3D elevation program. Can you talk a little bit more about what that is and
Sure.
maybe
I'm
what
going to be able to
NV5
talk
is doing
about
with
it at the highest of high levels. I don't want to be able to pretend that I'm the expert, but
well, hey, I hate to tell you this, Drew. It is an elevation program, so you're going to have to talk at the high level.
Oh, good fun. I like it. It's more or less exactly what I kind of alluded to previously, is that it took 100 years to get the from a DOQQ quarter quad to get all that for the entire nation. And as information and requests becomes more detailed, the federal government realized that they needed a more accurate elevation data set for the entire nation. And funding is always difficult at the federal level, so they came up with a program for states to pony up anywhere from 50 to 75% of the project, and they will fund the rest for that, and they will manage it. And so the state don't always have to have the skilled resources or project management or contracting mechanisms. The federal government manages all of it. So USGS has map liaisons who are fantastic that support the states throughout the nation.
I am so excited to talk about Carlson Software. Founded in 1983, Carlson Software specializes in CAD design software, field data collection, and machine control products for the land surveying, civil engineering, construction, and mining industries worldwide, providing one-source technology solutions from data collection to design to construction.
Oh, yeah. Carlson Software's renowned dedication to customer service is unique in the industry. Their software suite is designed to complement land surveying operations and provides a variety of survey features to process data from surface modeling to least squares network adjustment. Users work seamlessly between the office and the field by utilizing company-wide design styles for ease of use and efficiency.
And I can say I have personally been using Carlson since 1991.
Whoa. 1991? Yes. How is that possible?
Oh, my God. I don't know. I mean, time flies when you're having fun, that's for sure. But back in 1991, when I was introduced to Carlson, it was very apparent to me that their software products simply think like a surveyor. It's so easy to use. Their customer service is second to none. And I actually went to Maysville, Kentucky for some training and played golf with Bruce and his brother.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. Nicest human beings on the planet. Highly recommend Carlson.
To find out more, simply go to carlsonsw.com. Be sure to let them know the Geoholic sent you.
Now, I know you've worked, and we're going to get into this a little bit deeper, you've worked on some really cool LiDAR projects. And I'm sure we have a number of people listening that, have heard the term LiDAR a lot and probably don't really understand what LiDAR is. Is that something you can expand on just a little bit?
Yeah, I can talk about it in terms of at the general area, so
Sure.
It gets almost everybody to understand it.
Yep.
And then if you get to the more specifics, I'll give you some links.
Fair enough.
So basically, at the high level, it stands for light range and detecting. Think of it as a GPS point times a billion. So it gives a very accurate representation of the Earth's surface. And it's been a technology that's been around probably 50 years. The federal government, the military had it. And then after 25 years, it becomes publicly available and commercialized. And so within the last 20 or 25 years, it's become very much commercialized and available. And it can be anywhere. It can be on your iPhone, right? There's a LiDAR sensor. You can't see it right there. So the technology has improved. But basically, it gives on your desk, I see it's about 2 square meters. If you're dealing quality levels based on USGS specifications, if a QL1, a quality level 1, it's an average point spacing of 8 points per square meter, or PPSM. So on your table, you would get 16 points of data on your table, and so it would be able to pick up your microphones or your computer screen or your desk. So it picks up some details that you wouldn't normally see if you did it from a photogrammetric approach of just generating mass points or contours that would skip everything in between that 1 foot distance.
So is QL1 the highest level of density, or what does QL2 look like?
The quality levels are based on accuracy goals that USGS has implemented, and USGS has some wonderful more information to define it more, giving some specifics pertaining to it. But it tends to correlate to basic. There's a QL3, QL2, QL1, and QL0, and the lower the number, the higher the accuracy, and tends to be the higher point density as well.
Gotcha.
And then if you want to meet those quality level specifications, you need to, of course, have vertical and horizontal guarantees through ground control. And so we go out and call NVA and VVA type points and calibrated points. So I don't know the count per square kilometer, per square mile, depending on the project that you're doing, but that just gives a guarantee of what it can be met and achieved.
Gotcha.
In terms of accuracy.
Gotcha. Now I know there's something you're excited to talk about, and NV5 has recently completed a LiDAR project across, am I reading this correctly? 5,125 square miles of eastern Massachusetts.
I thought that was all of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of Massachusetts is roughly is about 10,000 square miles.
Oh wow,
It's half of it. Jeez, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you think, yeah. Well, I mean, you're in Arizona. It's a little bit bigger of a state, but Massachusetts has some very interesting terrain in that they have, water with the Cape. They have some plains in the central part of the Commonwealth,
Sure.
and then they have the mountains in the Berkshires. So it's a very interesting project. About 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, we did the western portion of Massachusetts through the 3D elevation program with USGS. It was one of the first projects, and it was a QL2 product, which is on average 2 points per square meter. And so this project over several years was a QL1 project for the 5,000 and change square mile project for those areas.
So how many points is that? You said Q1 was what did you say? 16 points per square meter?
For this project, it was 8 points per square meter. So if you do, who knows the numbers? Come on, you the surveyors. How many square meters in a
square mile?
Oh, good Lord. Don't put me on the spot. I don't have a calculator,
Come on,
dude.
Kent.
No, I don't.
You're supposed to know these things.
I have no tools in front of me to be able to figure this out right now.
Just because of how late it is, I'm going to ask someone who's smarter than all of us. Hey, Siri,
There
how
it
many
is.
square meters in a square mile?
Go to
How
ChatGPT.
many square meters in a square mile? Man, 2.6
2.6 million
Oh my God.
times 5,000.
Well, times 8.
times 5,125.
Times, yeah, and then 8 points per square meter. How did you even manage the size of that file?
Very, very, very strong people. They just
Wow.
carry it around. No, it's all broken up into blocks. So just based on traditional photogrammetry or imagery projects, you need AT blocks or aerial triangulation blocks. You need calibration more or less blocks to calibrate the data that's broken up that way.
That's 106 trillion.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that is
Give or take.
give or take a couple trill, just depending on where you round.
So that's an amazing accomplishment. How did that come together? Like, how do you even plan for a project like that?
So there's the technology has improved tremendously in that, we can go into tremendous details on all of these things, but having a certain type of airplane, a certain type of sensor. So if the sensor, we try to use the latest and greatest sensors that are out there. We use a lot of Regal sensors.
Sure.
For these large area collections. We have 50 or 60 different types of sensors, but for these types of projects, we use those. And so you can fly a little bit higher, so there's less flight lines, and so there's less. There could be always less noise as well. So it's really in managing how the project is captured, and then once you manage how it's captured, you can maintain it and break it down into smaller pieces.
How high is a flight to get a QL1 Quality.
Oh man, I know I was talking with surveyors, and I wrote down all of my specs. I believe it's 1,200 meters. Yeah, about 4,500 feet AGL.
Interesting. So when you're doing this, do you have to follow or abide by like the ASPRS accuracy guidelines?
You could do ASPRS. It depends on the client, or ASPRS or NMAS or what have you.
Hang on just a second real quick. We had somebody come by the door. We've never had a visitor before.
Oh, well, I've been talking about some good stuff. I mean,
Is this what I got to sign?
Oh, yeah. Pardon the interruption. Kent has to sign a plat and do a little bit of his day job.
well, while we're doing that, I always find it funny is how you were mentioning a couple of names earlier, and that Elaine.
Oh, sure.
Ball,
Yeah.
And I know Elaine as well. I went a couple of years in a row to the Topodot conference.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Orlando, and so her career kind of blossomed from that with her relationship with Topodot.
No, that's really interesting. And you said the same thing. You guys use a lot of Regal scanners, and when we were at Geo Week in Denver, we talked to a lot of folks from Regal, and it's just interesting how like all those worlds kind of connect.
Yeah, yeah, Ted Knack was what he kind of put together Regal USA, right? So in Orlando. Yeah, it's you're in the industry long enough, you kind of someone knows someone. It's no longer 6 degrees or 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's 1.5.
Oh yeah, it's 2 degrees of geoholics when we go to a survey conference. It's oh, you were on and here, and then he knows him, and everyone seems to know each other when we're bouncing around there.
Yeah, it's very funny. I get to go to a lot of the geospatial conferences and Geo Week. I didn't get to go to it, but I think you met about 50 of my colleagues that were there.
Yeah, so we saw quite a few. But now that I understand how big the geospatial department is there, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You're going to have a big presence. I mean, you got one of the biggest groups around.
I think everybody made their request all at once, and they just got approved. I think
Oh, really?
it would be less, but it's still quite a. That's a big one because you also get to talk about LiDAR, and that's one of our biggest portions of our business is the acquisition, processing, and delivery of LiDAR data.
When you say biggest, what do you? How big of the pie would you say that is of your group as acquisition of LiDAR data?
I don't even want to throw a number out there, but I think acquisition itself, so the acquisition, processing, and delivery of data, so that includes imagery, LiDAR, hyperspectral, thermal, all those types of sensors, makes up about 80%, 85% of our business.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. So that was a first.
What's that?
I had to do work in the middle of a podcast.
I'm shocked that
I had to sign a plat in the middle of the show.
I just said, you got to
expense anything that you do here.
Yes. The entire
awesome.
show and all the
That is so
refreshments
funny.
associated with are now billable and expensable.
You know what? I think it should be on Regal.
I mean, we just gave them a few shutouts.
That was a free plug. Don't get used to it moment.
Right.
All of our friends at Regal that are listening right now and I know Regal's considering being a friend of the program.
Yeah.
You should probably do it.
Oh man, they really should.
No, we're big fans of Regal.
We absolutely we are.
No question. So this data,
all the other ones, I mean, imagery, we use Vexel. I mean, we use a lot of sensors, and it's based on the project, the conditions.
for sure.
We do a lot of bathymetric LiDAR, which is a new thing that we're talking about. But they're all good.
There's tons of great tools out there. It's just utilizing the right tool for the right application, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty fascinating how the software, you can look at it from a very minute point of view, but capturing it for a certain aspect of it or a dashboard or a viewer. There's so many different complexities and nuances that clients are either used to or not aware of that they might want to be introduced to.
Mm-hmm. So something I found interesting, all this data that was collected, all this mapping that you guys did across over 5,000 square miles, what was this used for?
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
Yeah. So the story itself is really fascinating. So the project was contracted in late 2020, early 2021 for the acquisition. But it took about 3 years to get to that point. So initially, USGS tries to complete entire states worth of data. And so USGS and Massachusetts kind of reached out to each other and spoke to each other saying, you need to complete the eastern portion of Massachusetts because you capture the western portion, start budgeting it. And so I was, since we're talking about conferences, I was speaking, we were at NISGIC, which is the National Geospatial for more or less for GIOs or directors of geographic information for states to kind of get together and kind of talk about things. And so it kind of came from that, and that when we were trying to talk about getting QL2 funding, I was talking with Massachusetts about what do they want to get out of it? What's the purpose of it? Who's the bigger funder of it? And DOTs are very big funders of getting a complete data set of a transportation network that they would need to have. Hold on one second.
Awesome.
I paid the kids $5 to stay away, and it's not enough money, I guess.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So what happened is that there was more discussions about the benefits of getting a higher point density data set. And when you talk about a higher point density, achieving a higher accuracy and getting more information, more agencies within Massachusetts were interested. And the benefit that Massachusetts has is that they have an Office of Geospatial Information. So that it's called Mass GIS. They had a wonderful director at the time called Neil McGaffey, who's been in the business for 25, 30 years. And he has retired last year, but this was one of his projects that he was trying to get together and complete the data set. And so going from a 1-year project to a 3-year project was to get more funding, but then also to work towards one of the main purposes that I try to do is, in our company, is that we want people to use LiDAR data, not just use the bare earth DEM or 1-foot contours or 2-foot contours, to actually use the point cloud. And so the only way you really get that is if you process and do additional derivatives from that LiDAR data so people can understand it. So what Massachusetts has agreed to, and they did at this large of a level through funding and other mechanisms with other agencies, was to get a larger elevation data set. So they did it tidally coordinated, so the Cape would have a larger footprint of elevation data. Then the next would be to there's some automated processes in terms of further classifying the point cloud. And so we had an automated approach to doing structures and structures and vegetation, okay, low, medium, and high vegetation for the entire area. And when you deal with it at the large area, it's very competitive at a per square mile price than you would do for a small community. And then USGS next evolution of using this elevation data is to have a national hydro data set, or NHD, or 3D HP, three-dimensional hydrographic data set. And that is going to be the next evolution of the 3DEP program, where they take the LiDAR data and they are using it to be hydrologic data. So what the Commonwealth did is that's two separate projects, but what you can do is you can make it NHD or 3D HP ready, and that they had culvert data. And so they provided the culvert data, and then we also hydro flattened the data so you can actually see the stream run through a culvert.
Oh, wow.
And so you can do some directionality. And so it was a longer process, but it's a complete picture that is needed.
Sure.
That the Commonwealth really saw and saw some value in.
So is it safe to say that at some point, it might not be in the not too distant future, that the entire country is going to have LiDAR, it's going to be mapped with LiDAR data?
Absolutely. I think it's going to be within the next year or two.
QL1?
No, QL2 at a minimum. And QL1 is the next version of it.
Mm-hmm.
8 years ago, QL2 was more expensive than it is today.
Gotcha. So one of the things
when you said mapped, hang on a second. You said mapped.
Scanned.
Yeah, but that means done. What about available?
Yeah,
like,
good question.
Yeah, so Mass GIS, I think as of this week or next week, will have their data. They have a wonderful data clearinghouse or repository. I forgot the jargon that they use, but USGS has all of their data available on their site. Mm-hmm. So if you want to get a county or a state or a tile, you can download it directly from USGS's site.
Do you think they're going to be the leader, and where you said in the next 1 to 2 years, is that going to be the best resource for LiDAR data for the country?
For the country scale, if you're talking about a smaller, like from a city point of view, a city would have probably a more complete, higher point density LiDAR data set. Some of them go do it by themselves. But when you can combine funding at the federal level, states will incorporate cities to pony up so you can acquire a higher resolution point cloud for that geographic area of a city.
And that really,
so I think the next evolution is going to be two spin-offs. One is you're going to move to a higher point density LiDAR data set for the second generation, because things change. You have structures that change, and city. One of the biggest funders of geospatial data is from Next Gen 911. So where you need three things: you need address points, you need points and locations, and you need imagery to route all of that, and building footprints. So imagery and LiDAR at the state level is the most economical way of producing it, because now states are going to be responsible for Next Gen 911 routing, and having it complete is having it all captured at the same time so they can verify where things are.
And that you brought up one thing, and I was just curious, and maybe this is the same thing, and I know they're very, very related, but you said more points means more accuracy and more accuracy and more density of points. So in my mind, I picture more accuracy of the data you're getting, but also more things identified.
100%. So,
and which one drives versus the other is really my question.
It depends on the client and the need. So if you're talking about, for like Massachusetts, you had people that dealt with forestry, and so they wanted, tree canopies. And then cities, they have their tree inventory type projects, so they want to get a count of where their ornamental trees are and getting a count. And so you can classify LiDAR data to have a vegetation for low, medium, and high vegetation, and so you can actually identify a tree, the higher the point density, how big it is, and if you incorporate other technologies like hyperspectral data, you could identify the tree species and the health of it.
That's insane, by the way.
That is crazy.
Yeah,
that is crazy. So one of the things you mentioned, that was as a result of this project, the 5,000 plus square miles. The data uncovered 1,000 primary addresses and over 10,000 structures previously unidentified by imagery alone. That's crazy.
Yeah, when I heard that from Massachusetts directly, I was like, "Are you missing? Did you give me too many zeros?"
Or do you say you're welcome?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, of course I said that, but I'm trying to be realistic. I'm trying to be the better person.
Right.
So how they have, you need structures for your address points. And so how the Commonwealth handled getting structures is they had an automated process to capture building footprints or roof prints from some automated or manual capture, digitizing 2D capture for the entire Commonwealth. And so we're also the imagery provider for the Commonwealth. We've been doing it every other year. So 2019, 2021, and we're doing it this year as well. And so they were fortunate that they had both imagery and LiDAR captured within the same spring season. And so they had imagery and they updated their structures layer. And we also classified the LiDAR data for structures and vegetation. Now, it might not be 100% because you have some trees that overlap structures and stuff like that, but you have a general idea of it. And so when you have 8 points per square meter, it identified all of these additional structures that they didn't account for in their process.
Wow.
And so it just proves to show that the next round for the western portion of Massachusetts, it just validates that, because one thing happened in the pandemic is a lot of people moved out of the city, moved into rural areas. And so not every person, builds by the book, so to speak, and that's every state, right?
Sure.
Everybody tries to save a buck from Uncle Sam.
Yep.
And so having that data just uncovered just 1,000 primary addresses, which just is a huge number in and of itself, of just 5,000 square miles.
Crazy.
If you're talking about larger geographic areas, it could be substantially more. And so that proves the case of having a higher point density to not only use as a QC to other ways of you're capturing data. It's a great tool from just that point of view.
You know why this is really interesting to me? I have a friend that, gosh, this goes back probably 5 years. He had this idea of doing something not as detailed as what you guys have done, but working with undeveloped or underdeveloped areas in Mexico where there's really not a cadastre there. There's really no way of tracking residences. There's really no way of doing tax assessment, that type thing. So this is a, big picture type thing, but he's like, I want to develop an app and I want to do enough mapping to where, these areas, these communities can start to put a map together, basically a GIS, where they have, approximate property lines for structures that exist, and to develop a tax assessment for these properties. And what you've discovered and what you've uncovered goes along exactly with what he was talking about, just in a much more developed area. But the concept is the same.
It's a great base data set that can achieve a huge amount, not only for structures, but also for hydro-related work, and also forestry-related work and transportation.
Sure.
So it kind of goes into lots of different agencies using the same data set. So, it removes the idea of data redundancy, where everybody's using the same data for different purposes. And there's plenty other, what we're trying to do is, and USGS has realized it, is during that first go around, is they're like a bare earth dam. Everybody wants their 1 or 2 foot contour. And so everybody wants that because you want an accurate representation of the Earth's surface, and you can remove the surface features and just get the elevation data. And then you can also create the digital surface model if you need it as well. But there's plenty of other data sets that can be included and that states should consider. And that's, something that we're talking with other states to educate on. And I appreciate the time that talking about all this is that the main purpose is that we want, and the states want, and USGS wants people to use these data sets. And the best way to do it is to further classify and create more derivatives to help with it. That's the best way to explain that.
Yeah. And it kind of, so really it sounds like, these data sets are going to replace the outdated, 7.5 minute quad maps, basically.
100%.
That's really the gist of it, right?
Yep.
Interesting. I love the folks at Bad Elf. Bad Elf GNS receivers deliver affordable accuracy through easy-to-use hardware supported by continuously evolving firmware, apps, and cloud services. Founded in 2010, Bad Elf created the first made-for-iOS external GPS accessory and now enables high-performance location services for all mobile platforms.
Man, that's amazing. Did you also know that all of your new GNSS receivers can be accurate, affordable, and flexible? The Bad Elf Flex offers a trailblazing survey-grade receiver that delivers consistent accuracy at a highly affordable price.
I'm going to stress affordable price.
Yeah.
You got to check it out. Many people think companies go into business to create products and services, but at Bad Elf, they strive to create loyal customers. To find out more, simply go to badelf.com and let them know the Geoholic sent you for the baddest discounts available.
I got two questions. One, you were asked to map the eastern half of Massachusetts, and I'm assuming because the western half was already mapped, and I'm assuming that's because it was done a certain period of time ago. And then you just mentioned that when you go back to do the west half like you did the east half, so what's the timeline between, going back, and is it based on advancement of technology or more needs, or when do you think you're going to go? You just did this massive 106 trillion point deal. When are you going to go back to the east half?
Yeah, that's always a good question. I mean, the conversation was on like the imagery side with the Commonwealth is that they justified a need to capture new imagery every 2 years. And it depends on the amount of growth and development and client needs, in that some go on a 5-year cycle, a 2-year cycle, an 8-year cycle. The USGS has a requirement, not a requirement, they have a guideline that they try to follow, is that if the data is 8 years or older, they would like to have a refresh and would provide their match through the 3D elevation program. And so a lot of states follow that guidelines, in that since the western portion is now just at 7 or 8 years now, that the federal government would be open to doing a match. And so not every state can fully fund things. And so it really depends on funds. I think in the next week or 2 or 3, the Commonwealth is going to introduce a new director of geospatial technology after the previous person retired, Neil. And so that person will probably begin the task of forming a committee to help with that discussion. So it's really a partnership that goes on between not only with the Commonwealth, but their agencies within, and the conversations with USGS, and also with the private sector. It's a very unique and interesting relationship that goes on.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And that leads right into my second question, which is, it sounds like you have to pull all these agencies together. Yeah. Or I mean, ideally, especially for a guy like you that obviously is in the business to fly more and map more and collect more data. Yeah. Talk a little bit about the challenges of, essentially, you have a whole bunch of agencies that all want to use the data. Who's going to pay for it?
And who owns it? Right. Who owns the data?
Who gets to, I'm guessing the state does, but.
So since it's more or less any federal program requires that the data become free and available to the public.
Well, that's good.
So this data is 100% publicly available.
Right out of the gate?
Once the data is finally approved and
gotcha.
Available on USGS's website.
And I'm guessing as soon as a couple agencies get involved, the state chips in, the federal government comes in and backs it, it damn well should be free and available, if you ask me.
Yeah, and the one thing I want to circle back on that I think is so crucial is the fact that all these different entities are using the same data set to make decisions.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Really?
That's huge.
It's very huge.
Yeah, and since this is federally funded, I'm just curious, and you don't have to answer this question, but since it's federally funded, does NV5 have to have like lobbyists working on Capitol Hill, that type thing, or is everything done through USGS? I mean, what does that effort look like?
I'm not going to spill our secret sauce to you, even though you guys are wonderful. But what I will say is that there's a contract vehicle that every geospatial firm that will collect QL type LiDAR data needs to be approved vendor.
Gotcha.
Through USGS, and that's called GISP, GPSC. I forgot what it stands for, but we're on the 4th version of it. It's called GIPSy 4.
Yeah.
So if you are an approved vendor, you then have the ability you can work directly with USGS. There's many different approaches. We're a nationwide organization, so we don't just focus on one geographic area.
Yep.
And so, we have upwards of 10 or so geospatial offices around the country that can focus and support different roles.
Sure.
It really does depend on the state, the need, the funding, the match.
Yep.
And the type of derivative data that's needed.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So much to take into consideration when pursuing projects like that. It's just massive.
All right.
It's crazy. So it sounds like, I think it was right before we got cut off, we were talking about the fact that at some point, you said, I think in the next maybe 1 to 2 years, the entire country is going to have QL2 LiDAR data available.
At a minimum.
Really? Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Including some of the parts in Arizona and Utah that I don't think even have humans may have looked at it once. Or wow, that's crazy.
That is that's awesome. So how do you, and maybe it's not part of your job, but like technology is advancing at such a rapid pace, and the ability to collect more densified data, more accurate data, that type thing. I mean, how does NV5 keep up with all this?
So there's always research and development, being open to, sometimes the federal government will direct you in terms of where it needs to be and what it needs, or the client will direct you. A lot of it is driven on price and competitiveness and how you can process more data faster and more quickly.
Sure.
A lot of the way the technology is going is that I'm sure you're seeing this in the survey world as we do as well. We have some survey teams spread throughout the country as well, and our partner network, in that clients want more of the same of things to get more data sets. So whether it's imagery and LiDAR captured at the same time, whether it's oblique imagery, nadir imagery, and LiDAR captured at the same time, whether it's capturing it with another sensor type on the waveform, whether it's captured bathymetric LiDAR. And so what's happening is there's a need in that they have funded and they have a certain price point from 8 years ago or 10 years ago. In that, I think the initial mindset is how much more can they get for that price that they budgeted for? And I think so. There's two different approaches that you can look at. Do you want a higher point density and that you can do more with the derivatives? Or do you want all different types of data sets for the pricing that you kind of are budgeting for? Do you want imagery and LiDAR captured at the same time? it's two different sensors, but there's a sensor that can capture both at the same time. With imagery, you have to capture it during the day at a certain sun angle, and you lose a lot because LiDAR can be captured 24 hours a day, more or less.
Yeah.
So, there's all those types of discussions that going into it. So the next 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, I think, are looking at a higher point density for the same price if they were affording, a QL1 price per square mile is more or less the same price of what a QL2 was 8 years ago.
That's amazing.
It's crazy. I know there's companies out there that are utilizing satellites to collect imagery, basically like 24 hours a day. These satellites are just orbiting and collecting.
There's some wonderful benefits. Planet and Maxar and firms like that are wonderful need for large swaths of the globe or the entire globe. Our background is that we are engineering grade survey services. And so engineering firms rely on that point on Earth is where it really is. And that is within plus or minus so many inches or feet or whatever it is.
Just be careful your audience here, Drew. You said engineering grade, and there's quite a bit that would argue about survey grade, but that's probably a different discussion.
I'm gonna chalk that up to being too late on the East Coast for me to correct myself.
Nice,
That's funny. That's funny.
So, there are specifications that need to be followed, and so everybody, our biggest goal is that when the data is captured and delivered and updated, when there's a doctorate trying to get a remote sensing degree and they're using Cape Cod to do research on how the data is, they know that the metadata is what it is and that it's accurate and they can verify it. And so the data needs to stand the test of time, more or less. Even though it's fleeting, because people want more current data. So people want things more quickly. Third-party engines like a Google Earth or an Apple Maps, their data is great for the purpose of getting around. But will I build a house based on the accuracy of Google? Or no, because it's not engineer or survey grade. Data. Our data, because of the specifications, whether it's National Map Accuracy Standards, ASPRS standards, or following the USGS guidelines for quality levels, there's an accuracy tied to it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that all makes sense. So, Drew, you've done an amazing job representing NV5 Geospatial. We appreciate your time this evening. What are you most excited about moving forward? I mean, can you project 5 years out? I mean, what keeps you motivated? What keeps you going?
I love the idea of different technologies mashing up and merging together. The idea of thermal. Everybody thinks of, when they play Call of Duty or they see these movies and then they see the enemy and they're bright red versus in a war zone area. That same technology is now used for illicit discharge that the EPA might want to track for spills or heat loss in buildings or incorporating oblique imagery so that it can be used for emergency response. As well as having it accurately available, and everybody's using the same data set. I think that's we're key. Trying to, everything's become more interconnected in a way, and I think the big term and talk now are digital twins, right?
Yep.
And so everybody, people in the gaming industry always knew what digital is. Like, you can go from an outside of the building, you see the skin, and then you go on the inside, you see the details of the building.
Yep.
There's different versions of it. If you're talking with an architectural firm or an engineering firm, or at a large scale, at a world level. And so there's 3D models, then there's BIMs, And then if you merge that together, you can create your digital twin, but there's also how that data is incorporated into your base data set and viewed at the end client level. So there's a lot of intricate components that at a large scale that's publicly available that's more difficult than an enclosed system like a Google or an Apple might have, because everybody's viewing what they have. And an end client like a state or a city or municipality might be very different from each other. And so there needs to be some standardization pertaining to that. I'm kind of excited pertaining all that. That being said, I have to be more knowledgeable about all of it. And, you know, I try not to be an expert in just remote sensing or transportation or hydro or, you know, reality capture or what have you. But to think about all the data is the same data set for all of those topics and talking points.
Yeah, it's almost like you're building the foundation of the data set that can be used by everybody to do everything that you just mentioned.
Yeah, it's a very visual world, and that the data that we capture is 100%. It's an accurate representation of the real world we're living in.
Yep.
And so it's just, you know, there's time, there's money, and then there's specifications. And it needs to be somewhat standardized. And so it's very fun and exciting. I get to go to a lot of these conferences. I'm going to be up in Maine in a couple of weeks, and then I'll be at the Esri UC conference. So
cool.
Yeah, it's always fun to talk to people about what new technologies and softwares and what customers are doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. We may actually get to meet you at the Esri user conference.
Maybe there.
Yep.
We were originally going to have 3 booths because Axum and L3 Harris Geospatial, the Viz team, and NV5 Geospatial were having, but now we're all one company, so we have one big booth.
That's crazy. I know when maybe you guys talked about it when I was distracted signing a plat, but I remember the NV5 booth at GeoWeek.
Yeah.
It was like super massive and impressive. Yeah, it was super cool.
Drew, I got two last questions before we wrap up here. We talk a lot about mentoring, and this actually came up very coincidentally. I had a buddy of mine that reached out and said, "Hey, I have a family friend that just got is going to get his almost finished with his master's in GIS, and do you have wants me to meet with him? And what advice would you give a young GIS professional given your experience?"
Well, when you work at enough booths at enough conferences, you get enough resumes and enough people. I always say you want to have a complement to an industry. And so I have people that are interested in want to be a drone pilot. I'm like, I would study surveying and then also be a drone pilot because you're already out in the field.
Yep.
Right.
So you want to find something to complement or to find something else, and that makes you more valuable to an organization because I was a analyst or a specialist, and then I started training people because I could take complex things and dumb it down because I could try. That's kind of a skill set that I've tried to cultivate over the years, and so from that, the president at the time, they're like, you could talk too much, so you should be in sales. So it kind of works out. It kind of works out in a way in that you need to bring in something that can complement it. And it doesn't have to be another technology. If you have a marketing degree, you can be a Chuck or Elaine or you guys, and that there's complements that are needed in this space. I've always found the most interesting conversation I had in recent years was I met like the GIS manager for Visa. And he's like, "Do you guys have any statisticians?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, we need to track where the money is." And I'm like, "Yeah, that makes complete sense." Wow. So like, other than the federal government, who has a huge amount of statisticians, the financial industry use geospatial people for statistics.
Yep.
I never even thought about that.
I was having lunch with a guy today, and his, daughter's at that age where she's trying to figure out what she wants to do. She's in high school, and he's like, I talked to her about doing GIS. I'm like, anything in geospatial. I mean, geospatial is not going away. In fact, it is
every other industry
exploding.
is trying to figure out how to do exactly that. Yeah.
Yep. My boss told me many years ago, I think this stat is no longer accurate, but I love it, and still reminds me, it puts me in my place. He's like, in terms of like the geospatial industry in itself, like how big do you think it is? I think that it's tied now to like 40% of the world GDP at some point. But like in terms of like what it was, he's like, where do you think we stand in terms of like our ranking of the industry itself?
Yeah.
And he says, do you know what the industry is bigger than us by like the next one up? Huh. And I said, I have no idea. He's like, the bee industry. He's like, honey. He's like, our industry is not as big as the bees.
That's awesome.
Hey, that's a complimenting skill set.
Yeah, exactly.
We know somebody who is a beekeeper and a GIS professional.
Definitely complimenting skill set for sure.
That's awesome.
All right, one last question here, Drew. Do you have a mantra that you live by?
I try to be a positive person. There's so many negative things out there, and that you kind of just try to have a smile on your face when you're talking. I just try to live by that every day. Try to be a good decent human being.
Add value, make friends is kind of what it sounds like.
It doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, Drew, thank you again for your time. We really appreciate it. I know it's late where you're at. Before we let you get out of here, is there anything that we maybe did not touch on that you want to talk about real quick?
I wish that I could remember all of it. Probably not. I think you captured, you had a wide ranging topic. I think it would be important to give some people some direction that MassGIS has a website for that data, so people within the Commonwealth that could access it. And if other people want contact information on how to go about that, almost every state has a GIO or has someone that is involved. And we're just trying to educate people on the type of data that's available, that's being captured, and it's a good process and a good project.
And if people were intrigued by this conversation and wanted to get a hold of you directly, what's the best way for them to do that?
I try to be on social media, so I'm on LinkedIn a lot. So if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, just look at my name. Like I said, I don't know, before we were recording, my last name is fairly unique, and that you do a search, you'll either find my family or me. It's just so I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn, or my email address, which is just my first name last name at NV5.com.
Perfect. Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you again, Drew. It's been a fantastic conversation. Let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely. We will talk about your bourbon tour next after your skydiving.
You're going to meet us in Kentucky, right?
Exactly.
If you want to do one in Lexington, we have a wonderful office. If you open the windows, you can smell the malt from there.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I may have
Sounds
to
like heaven.
Skydive down into the Blanton's distillery is like the pipe dream for me. So
man, that's great. That's great. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks again, man. We really appreciate
thanks a lot.
it.
All right, have a good one.
All right, adding value and making friends.
That we
Mission
are.
accomplished. If anyone would like to be a guest on a future show, shoot us an email at info@thegeoholics.com. AJR, all my favorite songs, available everywhere. Until next time, have complementing skill sets. I love that.
Yes.
Be a positive person. Love that. And most importantly, be safe and healthy, everyone. I don't know what's wrong with me.
All right, have a good one, guys. Bye.